Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasasi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Om Supariprajacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022, at least in New York. And we are reading in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th chapter, Divisions of the Creation, tonight starting with verse number 6. And we are eager to hear your questions or comments. And please share these classes with your friends. And we're so lucky that you could be with us tonight. Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Vikendra Prabhu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tapasa Hedamanena Vidyaya Chatma Sangsthaya Vritta Vijnana Balo Vivridha Vijnana Balo Nipad Vayum Sahambasa. Long penance and transcendental knowledge of self-realization had matured Brahma in practical knowledge, and thus he drank the wind completely, along with the water. Purport. Lord Brahma's struggle for existence is a personal example of the continued fight between the living entities in the material world and the illusory energy called Maya. Beginning from Brahma down to this age, the living entities are struggling with the forces of material nature. By advanced knowledge and science and transcendental realization, one can try to control the material energy, which works against our endeavors. And in the modern age, advanced material scientific knowledge and penance have played very wonderful roles in controlling the powers of the material energy. Such control of the material energy, however, can be most successfully carried out if one is a soul surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and carries out His order in the spirit of loving transcendental service. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Pavijana Sehitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Holi Priye Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tapasa Yedamanena Vidyaya Chatma Sangstaya Vritta Vijnana Balo Yapad Vayum Sahambasa. Lord Brahma had seen the water trembling and the wind blowing violently, both as consequences of previous devastation. And here he makes a dramatic move, drinking the water and the wind. The tapasa yadamani vijaya chatma samstaya. He was able to do this because of his austerity, tapasa, and transcendental knowledge, vidya. Atma samstaya, he was situated in self-realization. And vritta vijnana below. He was mature in Vigyan, practical knowledge. So by the power of that, Viridha experienced mature Vigyan. He drank the wind and the water. Srila Prabhupada chooses to comment from by observing that from Brahma down to the insignificant living beings, everyone is struggling against the forces of material nature. There's a fight between the living entities and material nature. We're struggling. And here Srila Prabhupada concedes that by advanced knowledge in science and transcendental realization, one can try to control the material energy. This word vigyan is, Prabhupada translates as realization, but it also means science. In modern Indian languages, vigyan is the word for science. So Srila Prabhupada takes advantage of that rendering also, and says that by advanced knowledge in science and austerity. So Brahma, of course, had a different kind of scientific knowledge from today's science. But both the modern scientists and Lord Brahma were struggling against the difficulties of posed by powerful forces of nature. And Prabhupada again concedes that science has done wonderfully. Tapasya is also involved. Scientists undergo a lot of trouble to make their discoveries. But whatever we think of their efforts, and here Srila Prabhupada chooses not to slam them, but rather to say that they could be most successful in their program, in their fight against the powers of nature by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and carrying out His orders in loving service. Prabhupada says, we see very advanced devotees in our movement who are very austere and very advanced in transcendental knowledge. Can we say they have these powers to control the material energy most successfully? If yes, we haven't seen one. Devotees advanced in transcendental knowledge and austerity may not use that knowledge to gain control, to get control over the powers of nature. They may use them in other ways. They may use them for study, for preaching, for distributing books. We see devotees certainly empowered to distribute transcendental literature. And Prabhupada, these are like esoteric books on Krishna, and still members of the general public are taking these books due to the practical realization and austerity of the devotees. Now December is coming up. So many devotees will make redoubled efforts to distribute books, and they'll no doubt be successful because of practical realization, devotion, and austerity. Meena says, in the 4th chapter, Canto 4, Sati leaves her body. In the purport, Prabhupada compares the science of the Brahmins who sacrifice an old animal into the fire to test their mantra for it to come out a new young animal. He compares that science to the experiments material scientists use when they test medicines on animals. Yes. Of course, the scientists testing medicines on animals go to extraordinary lengths in killing animals, one after another, after another, after another. Anyway, we won't go into descriptions I've read of such things. But another thing is to note that they're motivated not exactly by pure science, but so much of profit is lying behind this. We'll discover a medicine that will sell in the marketplace and make the company millions of dollars. And so we don't mind sacrificing a few rabbits or monkeys or what have you. The sages were not so what's the word? Extravagant. And generally they were expert. It would work. They would chant their mantras. The animal would be revived. There's no benefit that comes to any animal from the usual scientific work done on medicines for human beings. But here, even the animal would benefit. Kendra Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Again, the last sentence struck me as Prabhupada giving a clue that if you really want to control material energy, best to surrender to Krishna.
Absolutely. That's his conclusion here. And Brahma's the example that he's done more than any ordinary scientist, and we'll see him do still more extraordinary things. And it's due to his devotion. So there's no harm if one wants to be a scientist, one wants to discover things, but then one should be a surrendered devotee of the Lord. Yes.
And in the verse itself, it said that because of Brahma's long penance, he had practical knowledge of what to do in the turbulence of the wind and the water, and he just drank it up. Whereas before he showed himself as being bewildered, and then practically he knew what to do. It sort of reminds me of when Arjuna was bewildered at first, and then he agreed to surrender and fight the battle. And then I can't cite a reference for this, but I had heard that Krishna was directing him, now kill him, now kill him, now kill him, like that. So he just knew what to do one after another because of his surrender.
The Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Mittamatra Bhavasavyasacha. Krishna's directing. And it's extraordinary here. Brahma's taking such an innovative move. One wouldn't have expected such a move, but it was inspired by Krishna from within because of Brahma's experienced realization and his austerity and devotion. Tulsi Priya says, what is the point and benefit of testing a mantra for an old animal to be rejuvenated? Or is the rejuvenation merely a validation of a sacrifice meant for the satisfaction of the Lord? Yes, that's what Prabhupada says. the mantras were actually meant for the success of the sacrifice. The reviving of the old animal, the way Prabhupada presents it, is a sort of a test, of a reconfirmation that the mantras, that everything is in place. Dhruva Maharaj had the whole universe in a literal chokehold by virtue of his devotional service. Tulsi Priya says, yes, the whole universe was choking. And powerful. Saraswati says, why did Brahma need to drink the water and inhale the wind? Was it to demonstrate power over material energy? Isn't water the source of all life and all planets? Not this water. This was water of devastation. And the wind also was devastating wind. These were forces remaining from the previous cataclysm. So therefore it was necessary. You need a stability and freedom from disturbances in order to create the universe again as it was. Anything else?
Yes, Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
When I try to envision Lord Brahma and this water, first we hear about Lord Brahma taking birth from the lotus, and the lotus must be massive to contain Lord Brahma, and even more so, the lotus is on the water, which is even more voluminous. So this swallowing, this drinking of the water or drinking of the wind, I'm wondering, how, I guess it's impossible to really imagine how it works, but it just seems like either Lord Brahma had to expand himself or he was given some major power, because it seems like the wind and the water was greater and more powerful than him, but apparently not.
To understand this, you have to do more tapasya and mature in transcendental realization. Okay. Tadvilokya vyadvyapi pushkaram yadhishtitam anena lokan praglinan kolpitasmit yachintayat. Thereafter, he saw that the lotus on which he was situated was spread throughout the universe, and he contemplated how to create all the planets which were previously merged in that very same lotus. Purport. The seeds of all the planets in the universe were impregnated in the lotus on which Brahma was situated. All the planets were already generated by the Lord, and all the living entities were also born in Brahma. The material world and the living entities were all already generated in seedling forms by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Brahma was to disseminate the same seedlings all over the universe. The real creation is therefore called Sarga, and later on, the manifestation by Brahma is called Visarga. Yatra Sarga Visargascha, in the different topics described in Srimad Bhagavatam. These are verse 2, Sarga and Visarga. Sarga means the initial creation by the Lord. The Lord supplies the ingredients of material nature, the components of material nature. We were hearing earlier about the evolution of the elements, the senses, the sense objects and so on. All of this happens without Brahma's involvement. Basic ingredients of creation are provided by the Lord himself, and the living entities are impregnated into material nature by the Lord himself. So Brahma is not creating from nothing or creating on his own. He probably gives the example that we have a contractor. The plans are already there, the funds are already there, the basic materials may already be purchased, but then we hire a contractor to do the further construction. So Brahma, or Prabhupada calls him the chief engineer, he takes what's already there and turns it into the elaborated universe. So that's called Visarga. The original creation by the Lord is Sarga, and the further creation by Brahma, sub-creation, Srila Prabhupada sometimes calls it, is Visarga. Murari says, is this a new day of Brahma or a brand new universe? Let me think about that. This is the new millennium, Padma millennium, and these things don't stick in my mind very well. But in this millennium, how many millennia are there? They're described. 14, this may be Manvantara. So in this millennium, Padma millennium, the Brahma creates the universe. Tadvilokya vyadvyapi, he saw the pushkar, the lotus, spread throughout the universe. Kopita asmi, Chintya, and he thought, now I'll create.
Maharaj, I don't know. Meena has a comment or question just above.
Oh, wondering why Srila Prabhupada would compare the material scientific experiments to the Brahman's mantra testing. I think he made that comparison to show that there's a spiritual science. Yes. This is, in one sense, Srila Prabhupada has a project to explain the science of Krishna, which is presented in the context of the Vedic culture, a context in which there are demigods and sacrifices and Vedic mantras and rituals, in which so many things are there that are foreign to modern, and especially modern Western culture or experience. So you have these things called sacrifices. We don't do sacrifices. And particularly, we don't do sacrifices with mantras that have extraordinary effects. And we don't have sacrifices in which animals are killed. We have slaughterhouses, we have other venues in which animals are killed. But this whole spectacle of an animal being killed in a sacrifice is totally foreign to our experience. So Srila Prabhupada explains it in terms of something of which we do have experience. This we know, scientists run their experiments and they kill an animal, and it's for a higher purpose to test the efficacy and safety of a particular medicine. So that we can relate to. So Srila Prabhupada's explaining something we don't know by reference to something we do know. Yes. Anything else? And again, there's not an exact one-to-one correspondence. I remember reading someplace that there was a woman who quit from her job as a lab assistant because she was working for Colgate-Palmolive or something like that, and they were testing some cosmetic product or what have you on rabbits, and just the person running the test was just killing one, as she put it, all those bunnies one after another, just being killed and thrown on the pile one after another. It was too much for her. So there's an example, sort of profligate, indiscriminate scientific experimentation with needless killing of living beings for a profit motive and not for any need. So that's a far cry from the Vedic sacrifices. But just to give some idea, Srila Prabhupada is comparing the sacrifice of an old animal, a scientific procedure. Okay. Padmakosham tadavishya bhagavat karma choditaha ekam vyabhangshid ruta shrita bhavyam visaptata. Thus engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma entered into the whirl of the lotus, and as it spread all over the universe, he divided it into 3 divisions of worlds, and later into 14 divisions. Bhagavat Karma Chodita, he was engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Earlier we came to this, we found this word udita, that this word chodita, where Vidura is encouraging Maitreya to speak about Bhagavad Gita. So encouraged, chodita, inspired by the personality of Godhead. To do service, one needs some inspiration. By tapasya, by self-realization, finally by the personal touch of the personality of Godhead, Brahma was inspired. Yes, I should do this service. Bhagavat Karma Chodita. And he divided the universe first into 3 and then into 14 to make it suitable make the universe suitable for so many different species. Vishwanath cites Sridhar Swami that he divided the lotus into three, and just to show that it wasn't impossible to create three worlds out of one. And then he expanded it still further. Three wasn't enough, so he divided it into 14 to provide suitable places for all the living beings. It's like town planning. You divide especially in the Vedic system, you plan a town, and the temple goes here, and the Brahmins are going to live here, Kshatriyas are going to live in palaces over here, the Vaishyas will be here, there'll be this, there'll be that. You need suitable places. So you have a universe, just one big lotus. Well, all right. Now we have to divide it up. In Chandigarh also, the city's divided into sectors. So in this sector, this, in this sector, that. All these different elements in each sector. It's a practical way of planning. We take our blank sheet and we divide it into sections. And now in each section, we're going to do something. So Brahma divided the universe into 14 worlds. All right, anything else? Okay. Etavan jiva lokasya samstha bheda samartha dharmasya yanamitasya vipaka padameschaso. Lord Brahma is the most exalted personality in the universe because of his causeless devotional service unto the Lord in mature transcendental knowledge. He therefore created all the 14 planetary divisions for inhabitation by the different types of living entities. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all the qualities of the living entities. The conditioned souls in the material world reflect only part of those qualities, and therefore they are sometimes called pratibimbas. Pratibimba means reflection. These pratibimba living entities, as parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, have inherited different proportions of his original qualities. And in terms of their inheritance of these qualities, they appear as different species of life and are accommodated in different planets according to the plan of Brahma. Brahma is the creator of the three worlds, namely the lower planets called the Patala Lokas, the middle planets called the Pur Lokas, and the upper planets called the Svarga Lokas. Still higher planets such as Maharloka, Tapoloka, Satyaloka, and Brahmaloka do not dissolve in the devastating water. This is because of the causeless devotional service rendered unto the Lord by their inhabitants, whose existence continues up to the end of Dviparartha time, the two halves of Brahma's life, day and night. Their existence continues till the end, when they are generally liberated from the chain of birth and death in the material world. The Lord is the reservoir of all qualities, and the living entities inherit some qualities from the Lord in different proportions. So we have brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, shudras, we have demigods, we have demons, we have human beings, we have salamanders, we have trees, we have so many different kinds of living beings. And they need their different places. They need their different places. And Lord Brahma provides those places by his expert arrangements. Parameshti, he's the greatest person because of his vipaka, his maturity in devotional service. Saraswati. Krishna reassured Brahma he would not be swayed from bhakti even after gaining creative powers. However, we hear that more often than not, anyone with extraordinary powers, like the fictional superheroes created by movie makers, or genuinely accomplished yogis or demigods, that power can become intoxicating and inflate the ego, making one think they are supreme. So although knowledge is power, it can be the cause of your downfall. Yes. That was Brahma's concern, that I'll have this great power and this great work to do, and by doing it, I may become entangled, affected by contact with these degraded living beings, and I may become puffed up by my sense of greatness. And therefore he took shelter of the Lord. He prayed to the Lord for creative energy, not just to get creative energy, but to be able to use it without falling down, be able to use it in a humble spirit of devotional service. And that required, and we see exactly what you're talking about, the people get some power and they think they're the greatest thing on earth. They become intoxicated by their power. And they forget that all this power is coming from Krishna. So Brahma didn't want to fall into that trap. He wanted to create, but as service to the Lord, and not forgetting his role as the subordinate creator, as a servant. Okay. Kendra, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also highlights animittasya as without material desire as being the key to Brahma's success. Yes. Animitta. Yes. Thank you. Anything else? Viduru vacha yatata bahurupasya harer adbhuta karmanaha kalakyam lakshanam brahman yata varnayana prabho. Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. Bahuvittamaha, you're the greatest knower. You know so many things. Bahu means many. Bahuvid, tamaha, you're the greatest of knowers of so many things. Bahu rupasya. There are so many forms of so many living entities. So Adbhuta, Karmana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the wonderful actor. He's doing everything, but it's within the context of time. So please speak about time. The complete universe is a manifestation of varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself. And all is under the control of the Supreme Lord in his form of Kala, or eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There's a time for atomic dissolution and a time for the universal dissolution. There's a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being. And there's a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depend on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilation. The time is crucial in creation and in everything. Nothing exists without time, at least in this material world. So Vidura is asking about time, and we'll hear about time as time goes on. We'll come to the chapter calculation of time from the atom. The Kendra is reminded of Ecclesiastes, a time for this, a time for that. Yes, a time for every purpose under heaven. Famous passage. We can't help but know the movements of time. In the second canto, the movements of the Lord, of the universal form. Time has been compared to or framed as representing the movements of the universal form. And there are different kinds of time that we'll hear about. This whole, in the modern context, Einstein famously saw that time is not uniform, that it stretches or acts differently in different parts of the universe. So that understanding is also given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Time is experienced differently by different living beings in different parts of the universe. Well, all of these things will be discussed as we continue in the chapter. Meena says, Krishna says, time I am, looking at time as a controlling energy helps to understand time. Yeah, time is sometimes called inconceivable because it's the non-different from the Lord. And time is also all-powerful because it's non-different from the Lord. No one can stop time. No one can get even a moment of extra time. So time is is a controlling energy for everything. When the Lord activates the universe, when he inserts the living entities into the creation, he does so through his time energy. The material elements were all disconnected or inert. They weren't working combinedly. But then when the Lord enters the universe as time, everything starts to happen. Without time, nothing happens. Without time, nothing happens. So that time is Krishna's energy. It's Krishna. Without Krishna, nothing happens. Or without the energy of Krishna, nothing happens. We need time. We're given some task and we say, well, I need more time. I need enough time. Prabhupada gives the example of how time works by citing, as an example, that you put a pot of water on the stove and you light the gas, but before the water can boil, you have to add time. Otherwise, the water would just sit there. Time has to be added. Then the pot will boil. So nothing happens without the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right. Anything else? Okay. Oh. Prisoners are sentenced to serve time. Meaning says, yeah, that's the nature of time. It can give liberation or it can confine. Ayu Harati Vaipum Sam in the second canto. The time takes away Ayu Harati Vaipum Sam. Every time the sun rises and sets, it takes away another day of time from everyone except those who are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of time, devotees are coming closer to freedom from material existence. Otherwise, the karma bandhana, what is that? Yagyartat karmanon yabcha lokoyam karma bandhana. Those who are working in the spirit of devotional service are becoming freed from the clutches of material nature, and time is working in their favor. Otherwise, those who are not engaged in Krishna service are having their time taken away, taken away, taken away, taken away. We can stop here and have your time. And who's leading today? Krishna, Krishna. Kendra Prabhu, are you front and back today?
I will lead.
All right.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Paripajikacharya Ashtottara Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, Premanande, Hari Hari Guru. Thank you, Krishna Kamtiya and the Kendra Prabhu for the nice kirtans. Thank you to Holiness and to all the devotees for taking part. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srimad Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayādvaita Maharaj Ki Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Bless you, Gurudev.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Always a deep dive. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.